Near the closing hours of World War II, the Nazis started to experiment with more unconventional aircraft designs and technologies that some would consider unnatural. With the ability to fly in any direction at a moment's notice, invisible to radar, and the ability to launch guided missiles, this new flying saucer would have changed the tide of war. The question remains, did the Nazis ever actually build a UFO? And what happened to the project? Hold on to your disbelief for this extra spooky Halloween spectacular at Found and Explained. UFO. Those three letters provide more excitement and more controversy than any other letters in the English language. UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, are the stuff of legends and speculation the world over, not to mention the stuff of heated debates and alleged government cover-ups that have spanned decades now. But before you start to wonder if you're somehow on the wrong channel, or if I've suddenly changed my focus from aviation to conspiracies of the alien variety, just relax. This video will still be about aviation, just aviation with a slightly more paranormal twist. As you may have guessed, the topic will be about UFO planes, or rather, UFO-inspired aircraft. Perhaps it shouldn't be too surprising that it was the Nazi Germans that were believed to have first tinkered seriously with the idea of UFO craft. After all, the evil empire, or the Third Reich, had a propensity for daft, even maniacal ideas, which was evident in some of the completely bonkers technology that they tried to invent. So it's not a stretch to imagine the demented Nazis making efforts to produce an alien-like aircraft. And perhaps the technology wasn't so unreal after all. Let's dive into it, shall we? It's well documented that Nazi Germany had conducted research into advanced propulsion technology. That included rocket technology too, of course, with the infamous V2 rocket being the precursor to intercontinental ballistic missiles that we use and have today. This rocket wizardry within the Third Reich explains why Nazi German scientists were plucked up by both the United States and the Soviet Union in the aftermath of World War II for their own rocket projects. But German obsession with cutting-edge technology went back farther in time, everything from flying wings and some things otherworldly, such as anti-gravity. Now I know my audience is rolling their eyes, especially when I covered anti-gravity last time, but bear with me for a hot minute. Anti-gravity research had started in the Weimar Germany in the 1920s. The RFZ-1 craft was the first anti-gravity aircraft that also happened to be circular in shape. The craft wasn't constructed by German military, but by the ultra-secretive and occultist Virile Society based in Berlin. Hermann Oberth's book, By Rocket to Interplanetary Space, published in 1923, did much to spur on German experimentation in aircraft and spacecraft development. It resulted in the formation in 1927 of the Society for Space Travel, of which the scientist Werner von Braun was a member. Von Braun was a true genius. Within a few years, he would also go on to invent the infamous V2 rocket, or pronounced in German, the V2 rocket, that stunned the Allies, and then he would also go on to become the head of the Saturn V rocket project at NASA that sent men to the moon. In 1928, however, the Society produced the world's first rocket-powered automobile, the Opel Rack-1, developed together with Fritz von Opel, after whom the Opel car company is named. We flash forward to 1933 when Adolf Hitler seized power in Germany, and almost instantly the Nazi Party took command of all rocket and aircraft development, with all astronautical and aviation-related societies being nationalized and Nazified. This was done very deliberately. Even in the 1930s, Hitler and his henchmen were convinced that it would be the cutting-edge technology, including spacecraft, that would allow the Third Reich to rule the world. Wunderwaffe. That's the German for wonder weapon, and it was the name given by the Nazi Ministry of Propaganda to a series of super weapons that the Nazis believed would allow Germany to secure victory and reign supreme over the Allies. It was a very real, potent belief by the Nazi top brass, which is why so much effort went into technologies that were undoubtedly way ahead of their time. In fact, Wunderwaffen was in everything from boats to guns to even trains were already being experimented on in the 1930s. Aviation technology was at the forefront of this push to validate the Nazi claim of Germans as the master race at the helm of the so-called Thousand-Year Reich. Martin Bormann, a loyal aide to Hitler, was known to have ordered the careful mapping of all mountain passes, caves, bridges and highways in which the Reich and beyond operated. This included parts of Bavaria and Germany as well as Austria and northern Italy. That was in 1938. The purpose? The selection of top secret sites for underground factories with gigantic workshops and launch pads, known as U-plants. Germany's top scientists would toil in these Behemoth research labs and factories deep underground with one single goal: the development and production of a powerful secret weapon. A slave labor contingency numbering 250,000 prisoners would complete work on these subterranean fortress-like labs, factories and launch pads, many of which would be linked by massive networks of tunnels and trains. Some of these wonder weapons would have been well documented and known prototypes, even working examples made of them. Others were more shrouded in mystery and even being debunked by some analysts as being pure propaganda myth. The Nazi UFOs are firmly in the latter group. No definitive Nazi UFO craft was ever seized, photographed, or in official use in the war. However, the allegations and conjecture around Nazi UFO craft are immense, and there is no denying that they certainly fit into the mold of what would have been a Nazi wonder weapon. It's believed by some that the Nazis had already perfected some form of circular-shaped aircraft designs just before the war. It was in 1939 that Heinrich Fokker, an aviation pioneer and co-founder of the Focke-Wulf Aircraft Company, was issued with a patent for a saucer-shaped craft with enclosed twin rotors. The craft's power system was described in the patent as follows. The exhaust nozzle was forked in two at the end of the engine and ended in two auxiliary combustion chambers located on the trailing edge of the wing. When fuel is added to these combustion chambers, it will act as afterburners to provide horizontal propulsion to Fokker's design. The control at low speed is achieved by alternatively varying the power from each auxiliary combustion chamber. Then there was the various codenames or subclassifications designated by the Nazis to a number of secret aircraft projects that strongly suggest that something circular and even otherworldly was being developed. Okay, now please remember, excuse my somewhat rusty German.
Buongiorno.
So here goes a list of names that were code for top secret aircraft projects. Rundflugzeug, Feuerball, Diskus, Haunebu Gerät, Frill, Kugelblitz, Andronergerät, Flugkreisel, Kugelwaffe, Jenseitsflugmaschine, Reichsflugschreiber, to name a few. Now, if you're German or you understand how German words are pronounced and you think I've done a pretty good job, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. Even if you think I've done a terrible job, a subscription would really help boost my morale after getting through that, and you can wait till the credits to hear my first attempt. But all of this does beg the question, why all those codenames if not for something that strongly suggests a UFO type craft was being developed or at least considered? And then there was Victor Schauberger, a fascinating man who was both a scientist and environmentalist. It was alleged after the war that the Austrian scientist had been involved in the production of UFO-type craft, and that he even flew one near Prague in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia in 1945. Schauberger's son later claimed that his father had come into the attention of Adolf Hitler as early as June 1934, who was said to be fascinated by the scientist's obsession with harmonizing propulsion with how it works in nature. Schauberger's UFO was a prototype known as the Baluzzo Schliever Meter Discus. It was 6.7 meters or 22 feet in diameter and could supposedly travel at 2,000 kilometers or 1,242 miles per hour, with plans for it to go twice as fast as that. The craft could also reach 40,000 feet or 12,000 meters in less than 3 minutes. It's been further alleged that the Italians were assisting the Nazis with their experimental craft at the Fiat experimental facility at Lake La Garda in northern Italy. In 1950, Professor Giuseppe Belluzzo, an engineer who had been an economics minister under Mussolini and whose name was given to the Schauberger craft, stated in an interview that the Italians had assisted the Germans in building a jet-powered, circular-shaped aircraft. Belluzzo claimed that the craft could take off vertically and then fly horizontally by what he termed a spinning force. During the war, it is believed that the Allied intelligence uncovered work on Project Fireball at Germany's Luftwaffe Experimental Center in Bavaria. Specifically, the Germans were trying to create an aerial device that would confuse Allied radar and, critically, be able to interrupt electromagnetic currents. These efforts were well underway by 1944, but further intelligence is said to have revealed that work suddenly shifted in that year to the development of the Kugelblitz, or round lightning craft. It is said to be a circular aircraft that was unlike any previous craft in aviation history, and that had to be the Nazi UFO craft. The timing is actually quite interesting. You see, by 1944, Nazi Germany knew it was losing the war against the Allies. The Nazis were desperate, and desperate times call for desperate measures. Is it such a stretch to imagine that they would have resorted to an extreme aerial technology in a bid to reverse their fortunes? The Americans were particularly eager to snatch up as much as they could of Nazi technology at the end of World War II. They wanted to do so before the Soviets did the same as they rapidly advanced from the east. Reconnaissance teams were sent in by the US Army even before Germany was actually defeated. There have been claims that what they encountered were plans by the Nazis regarding UFO-shaped anti-gravity aircraft. British agents who searched the Nazi underground factories located in the Black Forest discovered a number of documents describing experiments by the Nazis regarding turbine engine technology with extraordinary power. Whatever the Allies saw as they scoured German plants certainly freaked them out. Sir Roy Fedden, chief of the technical mission to Germany for the British Ministry of Aircraft Production, stated this in 1945 about Germany's aviation projects. "I have seen enough of their designs and production plans to realize that if they had managed to prolong the war some months longer, we would have been confronted with a set of entirely new and deadly developments in air warfare." Years later, in 1956, Captain Ruppelt, chief of the US Air Force Project Blue Book, was more specific about what the Allies encountered. When World War II ended, the Germans had several radical types of aircraft and guided missiles under development. The majority were in the most preliminary stages, but they were the only known craft that could even approach the performance of objects reported to UFO observers. And it gets even better. Rumours have swirled for years that the Canadian intelligence agents found plans for an advanced circular aircraft when they ransacked the main Nazi rocket experimental complex used near the end of the war. The Canadian intelligence agencies challenged scientists at de Havilland Aircraft Company to make something from the plans. It's alleged that they were actually able to produce a so-called flying saucer prototype, and it even flew, albeit very briefly. Engineers were simply unable to master the propulsion system needed to keep the aircraft airborne for a sustained amount of time. Those scientists would go on to work on the Avro Aerocar for the US Air Force and US Army respectively, although again, propulsion and stability proved to be a problem and the project was abandoned. Is the Canadian connection a true story or yet another Nazi UFO myth? One cannot be known for sure, but it's cracking stuff. Of course, I can't get through this entire video without mentioning some of the more crazy and loopy conspiracies. And no, I simply cannot avoid them when doing a video on Nazi UFO aircraft. It gets downright bizarre. For example, there were many claims that the Nazis were in fact using alien technology. And by alien, I mean visitors from other worlds. This is not the ramblings of a crackpot, but in the words of leading German scientist Hermann Oberth, who has been called the father of the modern rocket, strongly hinted at this when he once said, "We cannot take credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped." When asked who exactly helped the Nazis, he replied, "The peoples of other worlds." Even von Braun, remember him, the guy who designed the Saturn V rockets, has been quoted as strongly suggesting that other powers were at play during many of the technological breakthroughs of the 1940s and 1950s. Both of these people were brilliant men of science, so why would they make such statements if there was no truth to them? It's even been suggested that the famous incident at Roswell in 1947, which many believe was clear evidence of a UFO crash and a cover-up by the US military, was in fact a flying saucer developed by the US, hence the huge cover-up. And from where did the Americans get the technology? You guessed it, from plans obtained after the war of the Nazi German UFO craft. And let's not forget the Foo Fighters that were famously observed by Allied pilots in November of 1944. Although dismissed by the military and experts alike as optical illusions caused by aerial disorientation, many Allied pilots insist on what they encountered. These pilots claim that they were followed by disc-shaped craft capable of awesome maneuvers that glowed orange or silver and could never, ever be outrun in the air. So if what the pilots witnessed was true, what were those craft? Alien UFOs or Nazi UFOs? The list of conspiracies linked to Nazi UFOs goes on and on, including everything from secret bunkers under the ice in Antarctica to even Nazi UFO stations on the dark side of the moon. Iron Sky, anyone? This much is true. The post-war statements by respected Allied military men divulged that the Nazis were developing a UFO-type craft, and statements by acclaimed German scientists suggest the technology was even alien. There may be a lot bonunkum attached to the whole issue of whether or not there were even Nazi UFOs, but one thing is for sure, however, some of the allegations are undoubtedly very compelling. And it's up to you sitting there at home if you choose to believe. Rundflugzeugen Feuerbu Diskus Haunibu Geräte Adromenende Gerät Flugkreisel Kugelwaffel Jensetzflugmaschine Reichsflugscheibe Guggenheimer. I can't do this. This is insane. Are you serious? These names are... Welcome to Found and Explained, ladies and gentlemen.